Los Angeles, tens of thousands of Korean Americans and others urging an end to the violence.
It is not wise for us to express discrimination or hatred each other. I understand and sympathize with Mr. Rodney King, but the direction they work this time is not correct way to improve our social status.
Police say the widespread looting has ended in Koreatown, one of the areas hardest hit by rioting. Some 2,800 National Guard troops patrolled the city throughout the day and into the night, extending their dusk-to-dawn curfew. Meanwhile, President Bush declared the city a disaster area, making it eligible for federal assistance. Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley appointed Peter Ueberroth to oversee a recovery program, Rebuild L.A. The man who brought the Olympics to Los Angeles says he will try to coordinate efforts by the private and public sectors and draw investment from Japan if possible.
It's not going to work unless banks and businesses and insurance companies and all kinds of the private sector, small, medium, and large, make a commitment.
Saturday, the mayor's office put its conservative damage estimate at more than $500 million. In its destruction and its human toll, the riots have already surpassed any civil unrest of the 1960s. This is Steve Dowling reporting.
There were some reports of continued trouble elsewhere in the nation. In San Francisco, small bands of protesters skirmished with police in defiance of a Friday night curfew, but the city remained relatively calm. In Seattle, police are on guard for possible trouble with small groups running through the streets late Friday, smashing windows, looting stores, and turning over at least 2 cars. It was the second night of rioting there. Police have arrested so far 58 people. In New York City today, a march through the streets by 1,000 protesters, and leading that group was the Reverend Al Sharpton, who spoke to the crowd.
I'm angry, but I'm not mad. I'm not going to become a beast to fight a beast. I'm not going to become an animal to fight an animal. I'm not going to become barbaric to fight barbarism. So don't put that on us.
And in Detroit, a protest of Rodney King's verdict took an unusual twist. The demonstration was organized by a group that supports a separate nation for African Americans. Some whites did show up, and at least 2 were asked to leave.
I thought that we should show the world a different picture. We should show the world that there are places where people are united for everybody's rights.
We don't need them to show unity in our community. You see, they need to show unity by confronting those attitudes out in Bloomfield, out in Livonia, and various places where they live.
That demonstration, however, was peaceful. And that's the latest, of course. If there are any new developments, we'll have them. Dave?
In the wake of the Los Angeles violence, Democratic presidential hopeful Bill Clinton accused the Bush administration of preaching unity while practicing divisive politics. During a speech in New Orleans Saturday, Clinton said the president's policies helped set the stage for the eruption of racial tensions around the country this week. Clinton says the country must learn a lesson from Los Angeles.
Thomas Jefferson once said that the crisis of slavery is a fire bell in the night. The crisis in Los Angeles is now our fire bell in the night. Clear evidence once again of the profound divisions in our community, divisions that have been ripped to shreds in Los Angeles.
Clinton claims President Bush has failed to provide leadership on what he called the nation's most fundamental problem. The question now facing politicians and community leaders is what should be done to improve race relations. Some are calling for more tax dollars to go towards programs like job creation in the inner cities. Others argue those programs have been tried over the past 30 years and the problems remain. What do you think should be done? To give your opinion or to hear what others have to say, call 1-900-370-6397. The call costs $1.95 a minute. We'll record your message and may air it on this channel. No justice, no peace, a slogan chanted loudly by many African Americans. Many blacks say little progress has been made since the 60s. Some charge blacks are treated unfairly by the justice system and that millions of blacks remain racially segregated in inner cities. Doug Neville reports.
think that a police officer can encounter you and beat the living hell out of you, and nothing can be done about it, or nothing will be done about it. That's a very scary thought.
12 years ago, these streets were on fire after 4 white Florida policemen were acquitted for the beating death of Arthur McDuffie. Florida lawmaker Darrell Reeves says the black community from Florida to L.A. is still seeking respect.
Unless we begin to recognize in this nation the human value of each person, regardless of race, the human value of that person and the necessity of that person to have the minimums of life, shelter, food, work, respect.
In many ways, blacks say they feel like they just don't count. Miami Herald columnist Leonard Pitts made that argument in a forceful, passionate column on Saturday.
But my feeling in looking at this, the overriding feeling is white folks just don't get it. Refusing that we're all human beings, you know, and that we all wish to be treated as human beings. You'd think that people would understand this and quit making self-serving statements, quit using it as a political football, you know, quit giving me cosmetic manners, you know, quit having more of a commitment to jailing people than to educating people.
I'm Doug Neville reporting.
Racial tension in Ames, Iowa over the weekend. Police used tear gas early Saturday to break up a riot involving 8,000 people attending an annual spring celebration. Police say they do not believe the violence was a result of the Rodney King verdicts, but they say rioters were divided by race, black against white. Student leaders blame warm weather and alcohol for triggering the chaos. 22 people were injured, 27 arrested. Damage was minor, with a few windows broken. Anti-abortion demonstrations are over in Buffalo, New York, but the nation probably hasn't seen the last of them. Police logged nearly 600 arrests among anti-abortion protesters since the protest began April 20th in Buffalo. 120 abortion opponents who refused to post bail remain in custody on charges they tried to block entrances to clinics. Leaders of Operation Rescue, who organized the protest, say they'll now set their sights on organizing anti-abortion protests in New York in June for the Democratic National Convention and in Houston in August during the Republican National Convention. In Olivehurst, California, revenge for flunking a class apparently motivated a young man to kill 4 people and terrorize hostages at his former high school. Eric Houston surrendered to police shortly before midnight Friday after going on a shooting rampage and then holding 80 students hostage for 8.5 hours. Among those who died was Robert Brenz, a history teacher. One student said the suspect told his captors he went on the rampage because Mr. Brenz flunked him, and he wanted revenge. In Sydney, Australia on Saturday, Americans and Australians gathered together to mark the 50th anniversary of one of the most important naval battles of World War II. Thousands of people lined the streets of Sydney to watch U.S. and Australian military personnel march to commemorate the 1942 Battle of the Coral Sea, one of the main turning points in the war against Japan. Mark Ferguson has the story.
She's one of the largest links in the American defense chain. She stands 25 stories tall out of the water. She is the USS Independence, and her firepower is awesome. An F-18 Hornet, an intruder, just a slice of the fighting lineup aboard this mighty aircraft carrier. The Independence could well be classed a city at sea, home to no less than 5,000 men. Only 200 get to fly, catapulted off the deck at just under 300 kilometers an hour. A hole in the defense was permitted as the American air wing swept south over Sydney. Between sorties, time to commemorate the Battle of the Coral Sea. Half a century has now passed since these allies turned the tide in the Pacific. The tributes will continue to flow for the next week.
The Battle of the Coral Sea is significant because it marked the first strategic setback for Japan in the South Pacific. Historians say it changed the course of the war in the Pacific.
Are looking for substitutes.
And is this a good substitute?
Very good.
The major distributor of tower nuts in the United States is a Minnesota company named the Woodworkers Store. From their warehouse in Rogers, they send the nuts to enthusiasts all over the country. Chief Executive Officer Ann Jackson says although the nuts only sell for $1.50 each, it's important to the company to carry them in their catalog.
They make an attractive substitute for ivory so that you don't have to kill elephants. And the other reason is because they come from the rainforest. And if you buy a product from the rainforest, then it'll make the trees more valuable, and our hope is that then they're not cut and burned for farmland.
Although when the nuts are on the tree they are soft and edible, they become rock hard when dry. The milky, smooth texture makes them ideal for fine work, like this tiny goblet that Mary Reddick made. It looks, feels and lasts just like ivory, but its origins are vegetable, not animal. I'm Jason Davis reporting.
A South Dakota grocery store is sprucing up its appearance by being creative with its stock. A 32-foot replica of Mount Rushmore made of Coca-Cola products, now stands in this high V store in Vermilion.